Hey, chillers, we're back.
Which means it must be Tuesday.
It is. I'm Alex,
And I'm Amber.
and this is another episode of True Crime and Chill.
Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Chill, where we cover the cases we wish didn't exist.
Yeah, no kidding. Some of these cases we cover are extremely sad.
Agreed. Over the last year and a half, we've discussed unsolved murders,
Like Karen Bodine,
cases that have been solved but don't make sense.
like Kurt Cobain,
And this season, we seem to be covering a lot of family annihilators.
like last week's List Family Murders.
This week, we're going to cover another family annihilator, but this one isn't quite like the others.
Like Sesame Street, one of those things is not like the other. One of these things is not what it seems.
I wish it were as cheerful as Sesame Street. Before we get started, I need to ask, Alex, you're originally from the Pacific Northwest, like I am. Did you ever go camping when you lived up here?
I mean, yeah, I was a Girl Scout, so all the freaking time. Like, all the freaking time. Like,
Sure, like camp, but like camping in tents.
Yeah.
And...
yeah, no, as a Girl Scout, we camped a lot in tents.
It was intense?
In rain.
Yeah. Well, yeah, everything. It's always rain up here.
In the cold.
So my family, we never went camping as like when I was a kid, but when I got older, I went with my friends a lot in the summer. When I was young and unattached and didn't have a kid. Would you ever take your kids camping in the snow?
I mean, some people do, because, like, that's a thing. Like, some people actually do, depending on where they live and everything. But me personally, I hate camping in general. Why would I want to go camping with two heathens?
That's true. You are the mother of two small boys. Yes.
Yeah, I love my children. I do. But it is very true when they say, support local wildlife, raise boys.
It's true. Well, on the morning of Monday, December 7th, 2009, Charles and Braden Powell didn't show up for daycare as planned. The daycare provider became concerned because by 7 in the morning, the boys still hadn't arrived, and their mother, Susan Powell, was due at work at 7. According to sources, it wasn't like her to be late. A snowstorm was moving in and calling from 2 to 4 feet of snow. So the daycare provider, Debbie, called out of concern. Neither Susan nor her husband Josh were answering their phones. So she hopped in her van and drove up the street to the home of the Powells. She noticed that there were no tire tracks in the driveway in the snow, which means they hadn't left any time recently. She knocked on the door and nobody answered. So she calls the emergency contact number for the Powells, Josh's sister Jennifer and Josh's mother. Both women were concerned, concluded maybe there was a carbon monoxide issue and it caused the family to maybe die accidentally in their sleep. So Josh's family called the police to do a well check. The police arrive and they break a window to check and see if carbon monoxide was the issue and to see if the family is in there, potentially dead in their beds. The family wasn't there, but all of their stuff was. And when I say all of their stuff, I mean Susan's purse, her keys, her credit cards, her ID, and box fans are left on, apparently pointed at the carpet, causing some kind of confusion.
Okay. So, first off, was this like a small... Okay, so I know about this case. I do. I know a lot about this case, unfortunately. But was this like a small daycare or was it like a bigger center?
No, it's a smaller, like in-home, but it was like a preschool and daycare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, because that makes a lot of sense. Because I know that, like, because, like, again, I have two toddler-age boys. They both have been in daycare. Bentley was in daycare for almost 2 years of his life. I know that when we didn't bring them in, we normally wouldn't get a call from a daycare being like, oh, hey, we were just wondering about Bentley or we were just wondering about Wyatt until about 3 days after. So, like, if they went 3 full days without coming in and we hadn't called them, then they would give us a call and be like, hey, we were just wondering what was going on with the kids and stuff.
See, in my kids' daycares, he's been in a lot of different daycares. So for anybody who doesn't know, my son is high-functioning autistic and he's ADHD. So before we had diagnosis and medication, and even after that, we were dealing with him being moved around to a lot of different daycares because there were a lot of daycares that honestly couldn't handle him. He's actually a sweet kid. He's very loving. He's very affectionate. But
he loves space.
he can be a lot.
He
Okay.
loves space.
He does
Loves
love space.
space.
Yes. So when he didn't, like, we did finally get a really good daycare, and that was like before the pandemic, and now I work from home, so we don't really have to send him to daycare. Now he's almost too old to go to daycare. They would call us if he didn't show up, like, but we wouldn't get a call for a couple of hours. But
Yeah.
then again, like, it was kind of a sporadic thing, and usually he went after work. So, or after school, excuse me. So it, if he didn't show up, like if he wasn't at school, right, I'd get a call like, hey, was he not at school today? Like that kind of thing. So, honestly, to me, a good daycare does call. And the fact that
Well,
she was just right down the street, and it sounds like she probably didn't have other kids there at the time. Like maybe they were the first ones to show up, or maybe
yeah,
the
if she
only
was
kids.
able to jump in her van, either she had, because if this was like a small in-home daycare, then I would completely understand why the daycare center would be calling. I would completely get that. But like if it's like a bigger center, like an actual like center, like the centers that they have here on post and stuff like
Mhm.
that, you can definitely expect them to not be all up in your business like that.
I suppose it depends, because the daycares that Sawyer was going to were bigger daycares, and I would get calls.
But it might also be because Sawyer's,
Special needs.
yes.
Hmm.
So my kids aren't special needs, and so maybe that was the reason why.
Maybe. I don't know.
But I know that for experience, because they've been to, I've had to cycle through 3 different daycares, and each one was, "Oh, hey." And the only one that actually called to see why he didn't show up that day was the in-home daycare provider I had for Wyatt for a few months.
Hmm.
But so I mean, so like I would get it if like nobody answered and like she would get worried, but like I don't understand why she would just leave and go to the house. Like why does she feel the need to do that? Like why
So
not just
So
wait
if
a
it's a
few hours?
consistent thing, right? And she
Yeah.
was like, well, I know that Susan is supposed to go to work at 7 in the morning. It's 7. I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, but she could have
Like,
been sick. Like Susan could have been sick.
sure.
So why
And she
not wait a
tried to
few more
call them
hours?
first. And then when they didn't answer, she went to the house.
Yeah, but why not wait a few more hours and then try to call again?
She cares, I
Did
guess.
did did she know something? Did she think something was up? Like, did she already know that something was going on?
It just, I think to her, it seemed suspicious because it wasn't like them.
Yeah,
So anyway, that's all important. But before we move forward, we need to go backward a little bit and talk about the story up to this point. So
yeah.
Josh and Susan Powell met during a dinner party at his Tacoma, Washington apartment in November of 2000. By the end of December, they were engaged, and by April of 2001, they were married. Both were active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
Oh,
and they relocated to West Valley City, Utah, which is a suburb of Salt Lake City. Right. Now, the Powells went on to have 2 sons, Charles, born in 2005, and Braden, born in 2007. For a brief period following their wedding, Josh and Susan lived with Josh's father, Stephen Powell, in South Hill, Washington. While they were there, Susan's father-in-law developed an obsessive infatuation with her, which was only made worse by the fact that they were living there. Stephen followed Susan around the house with a camcorder. He used a small mirror to spy on her while she was using the bathroom, and he stole her underwear from the laundry, read her journals, and even posted love songs online using a pseudonym. In 2003, Stephen confessed his feelings to Susan, who rejected him. Unbeknownst to Susan, the confession was recorded by Stephen's camcorder microphone. The Powells then moved to Utah soon after, partly so Susan could put some distance between herself and her obsessed father-in-law.
okay. First off, ill.
Yeah.
Second off, I understand why they got married so quickly. So in LDS culture, when I say that, LDS religion,
Mm-hmm.
there is this saying called ring by spring. So basically, the whole reason why women or girls go to college in this religion is so they can go to college and meet a guy and get married, not so they can go to college and get a degree. It's so they can get married.
And they
So
were taking a it was like a religion course
yeah,
through the church. So yes.
yeah. So that honestly doesn't surprise me that the timeline was very sped up for marriage. That
It
really
did
doesn't surprise me.
still surprise some of her friends who were also LDS people.
Maybe they knew something about Josh
No,
that
they
never
just said he
happened.
was kind of like awkward and techie, but he seemed nice. But
But
they
I mean,
didn't know
like,
each other, so it seemed really fast to them.
however, his dad.
It honestly,
What?
it's going to get worse, and we're gonna hear more about that
Oh,
later.
yeah, I know it's gonna get worse, but I every time I hear this part, every time, like I said, I'm very familiar with this story, but every time I hear this part of the
Mhm.
story, it just makes me want to throw up because I'm like, I can't imagine being married to somebody whose dad is that obsessed with me.
Right. And he
Like
was more obsessed than Susan knew.
I would have ran for the hills, and this poor girl probably thought she couldn't because
Right.
some reason, but I would have ran for the hills. I would have ran for the hills. That's gross. That's
Right.
ugh.
So after the
Ugh.
move, they bought their house,
Mhm.
and then they had their two sons. And then Susan's journal entries and email correspondence indicated a presence of like marital discord.
Yeah.
And the reports are things like that he wasn't even holding her hand, he wasn't kissing her, he wasn't engaging with her sexually at all, which I mean, I know that things tend to cool off in marriages, but that's a little extreme.
Yeah.
There was tension with Joshua over his refusal to attend church services with his family and over his continued contact with Stephen despite his father's ongoing advances towards Josh's wife. So Susan's friends also pointed to Joshua's extravagant spending habits and to his, quote, extremely controlling behavior towards his wife.
Mhm.
Joshua filed for bankruptcy in 2007, declaring over $200,000 in debt.
Yeah. So, from what I remember from the story and what I remember reading, Josh was a very big spender.
Mhm.
Like, very big
Yeah,
spender,
he
but
bought
if
expensive
Susan
computers and cameras and yeah.
yeah, like, things he didn't even need, he just wanted to prove that he could buy it, and, like, if Susan tried to go and spend any money or do anything like that, he wouldn't let her,
Mhm,
essentially,
mhm.
and
Well, and
it
she was the main moneymaker.
yeah, it was her money that he was spending,
Yeah,
and I hate saying that, I hate saying, like, "Oh, it was her money or it was his money," but in marriages like this, that's ultimately what it boils down to, because, if he was the main money maker, he would've been like, "Oh, this is my money, blah, blah, blah."
right,
So,
right.
but the fact that, like, he had over $200,000 in debt,
Mhm. He
that's
couldn't
a
hold
lot
down
of
a job,
money.
and she was working for a bank.
Yeah.
So, and she had a cosmetology degree, and she,
Yeah.
like, totally stopped all that to go work at a bank so she could finance them,
So she could
surviving.
support them, essentially.
Right. So back to 2009, the house is empty, but it looks like it was kind of abrupt, like no altercation or anything. No signs of, like huge messes. There's toys and stuff on the floor, but Susan's purse, keys, wallet, credit card, and ID are all at the house, showing that she didn't leave like intentionally. However, their family's Chrysler minivan is not in the garage, showing that they left and they left before the current snowfall had started. So, Susan's best friend received a call asking if she had heard from or seen Susan. She hadn't since church on Sunday, which Susan and the boys attended, but not Josh. Like I said, they were they were fighting about that. The concern was that the family had gone for a drive because Josh often liked to go for a drive and take pictures.
Mhm.
The friend started calling around to the church congregation, and she heard that one of the members who lived somewhat nearby, Giovanna, had been over for dinner the night before to help Susan with her crocheting. It was reported that Josh was not usually a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Domestic? So Giovanna reported that while she was over, Josh offered to make dinner for everyone. So Josh and the boys went to the kitchen and cooked while Susan and Giovanna worked on, Susan worked on her crocheting and Giovanna worked on yarn and knitting. So Josh called his father for a pancake recipe and began to make pancakes. Though it was pretty obvious he wasn't really skilled in making the pancakes, as he would only make them like one at a time and then would serve them up to a person before going back and making more to serve the next person. Which, honestly, when I was first learning to cook, that's the kind of thing I did too, because I didn't know any better. So Giovanna said that the boys ate at the table and the ladies were brought theirs out into the living room. Susan's best friend said later that that was unusual because she, quote, never ever saw them eat in the living room. Now, granted, they had company, so maybe Josh was trying to be accommodating, but if they never ever ate in the living room, that's different, right? Shortly after this, Susan said she didn't feel well, and Josh suggested Giovanna should leave because he was going to go take the boys sledding. Giovanna said that before she had even finished putting on her seatbelt, the boys were in the van and out. They were gone.
So, first off, I wouldn't trust those pancakes with a 10-foot pole. Second off, what it really sounds like to me, because all of a sudden Susan gets sick afterwards, is Josh put something in her pancakes. And the reason why it didn't affect anybody else was because of how he was making them.
That's what it sounds like. Now, there's
Because,
obviously no proof.
yeah, no, obviously it's all speculation. But,
And you'll understand why there's no proof of this later.
Oh, no, I know why there's no proof of this. I know,
right, but we have listeners who may not know
yeah.
this story.
Yeah, it's a really sad story, too. But, yeah, no. But I definitely would have had some suspicions. Oh, my friend's not feeling well, but you're gonna go take the boys out sledding. It's the middle of the night, and
So this is an older lady, and it sounds like she may not have known the Powells very well. So she clearly didn't because there was a thing. I'll have it linked on the website, truecrimeandchill.com. But she's talking with Susan's best friend, like they're sitting in the same room and talking about it. And you can tell this Giovanna lady has no idea that the behavior that Josh was exhibiting was strange. Especially if he hadn't been going to church with Susan. Giovanna wouldn't know him like at all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So that evening, Josh finally calls his sister Jennifer, and she asked about him and the boys and Susan, and Josh said that he had the boys and Susan was not with him. Jennifer asked where Susan was, and Josh said he didn't know. She must have gone to work. As it turns out, Josh had driven all the way south to a place called Point of the Mountain. And while he's there, when they're getting ready to leave, he calls and leaves a message for Susan. The message feels very detached. And in it, he says, and I am quoting, "Hello, Susan. We are on our way back. And, anyway, I can't believe that my brain missed a day. I thought today was Sunday. And that was really, really stupid. All right. I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye." End quote.
So she had gone to church the day before, so obviously that was Sunday.
Right. And note how he didn't even say, "I love you," doesn't even pretend to try and be, affectionate.
Yeah.
So after Jennifer gets the call, she goes to the house to see Josh. And she waits an hour before he shows up. As it turns out, Josh had decided to take the boys on a middle-of-the-night camping trip in the freezing cold and snow. Now, Josh was known for being a spontaneous person. There are people who were close to the family who said that that was 100% Josh and the kind of thing he did all the time. But this brings me back to the beginning. And Alex, as a mother, is that ever a thing you would do to your boys, let alone yourself?
No. Okay, so it's very hard taking my kids to Walmart for a 45-minute grocery shopping trip by myself.
Sure.
I can't imagine going camping in the middle of the snow without planning anything.
Well, not only that, but there's also reports that he was a fairly detached father. He really only took the boys and doted on them when there were other people around.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And that's my thing is because I see that. I've seen that a lot. But I can't it's hard for me to go to Walmart to go grocery shopping with my two kids, let alone go camping with them, let alone do it in the snow. I don't even know.
So friends say that Susan would not have allowed him to take the boys in those sorts of conditions. So, of course, the police are pretty keen to talk to Josh. They take him down to the station and begin to ask questions. The rundown of the questioning says that Josh saw Susan the night before around midnight. They were finishing a movie. He was distracted and dealing with the boys who were in the room with them while he was being questioned. He said that after that, he took the boys to Simpson Springs, where he lit a fire for them and turned on the heater. There wasn't a whole lot of information on what they had done while they were camping. However, the police asked to search the van, and they found camping gear. They had, in fact, gone winter, middle of the night camping. They also find Susan's pink cell phone hidden in the console. which means there's probably no way it was Josh's because it was pink.
Yeah.
The police, unfortunately, didn't have enough probable cause to get a search warrant for the house or to book Josh. The day after Susan disappears, Josh puts bags and bags of trash into the garbage and burns some sort of metal object. It's burnt and melted to the point that to this day, no one knows what it is. He also started doing housework, like washing all of the towels and cleans out the van, like pulls it out into the driveway, opens the doors, wipes it down, he vacuums it. And while that doesn't seem like an odd Tuesday behavior, it's pretty suspicious for the day after your wife goes
Yeah, it's
missing.
odd for them.
Uh-huh. And his sister says that he was running around doing all of this stuff until the last possible minute before having to leave for his interview with the police.
Okay, so let's just talk about how she's missing and he's not looking for her, okay? And instead he's cleaning,
Mm-mm.
okay? And he's burning things. Like, I'm sorry, when I clean, I don't burn things, for one, and I've done some pretty deep cleaning. So he's burning
We've
things. He's
burned
burning
boxes, but not metal things.
metal objects. Yeah, you don't burn metal objects and stuff, and you don't, like, you don't burn, like, trash bags or take things out to, like,
Oh no, he was like filling up the trash can.
yeah,
Trash
and
bags filled.
washing out, like, all the towels and cleaning the van. Like, I understand trying to get all this done, but, like, at the same time, like, some of the behavior, I wouldn't be doing anything.
No, so here's to some people it might seem like he's trying to keep himself busy and distracted, right? But
But everything he's cleaning is things that she could have touched.
uh,
That's the thing. It's like, yeah, it looks like he's being busy and distracted, but he is cleaning all of the towels in the house.
he's also not making phone calls. He's not making flyers. He's not
Yep.
driving around all the places she could be.
Yeah, he pulls the van out of the driveway and starts vacuuming it with the doors open, wiping it down, like,
Don't be suspicious. Don't be
don't be
suspicious.
suspicious. Like, seriously.
So he goes to the police station for an interview on the 8th of December. The tape of his interview with the police is sketch.
Interesting.
He starts very emotional, like his hands are shaking, he's crying, he appears to barely be holding it together. But as it goes on, he changes to this very detached, nonchalant, he's distant, he's leaning back in his chair, he's rolling his eyes. He looks and he sounds bored.
Yeah.
And he's not asking what they're doing to find her or what he can do to help. He doesn't seem interested in going to find her. Meanwhile, Josh's sister takes the boys to the Children's Justice Center for the boys to be interviewed. Braden wouldn't really talk to them. Granted, he's 2, and he's probably just being, 2.
Yeah.
Charlie, on the other hand, is happy to talk about how he went camping. He says he went camping with his dad and his mom and his little brother, and he says that Susan has been in the van, but she doesn't come back with them. Now, granted, the kid is 4, and it's really hard to take him seriously, but also he has no reason to lie.
Yeah, but people tend to think that just because kids are young, they don't understand what they're talking about, but if you actually listen to kids,
Right.
they tell you a lot. Like,
Yes. Well, now,
like,
he did make up stories, like getting into an airplane and going to Dinosaur National Park. But he says that his mom stayed at the Dinosaur National Park and his mom stayed where the crystals are. So when police questioned Josh about what his kids were saying, he lawyered up.
of course he did. So
Granted, I would
I
too.
know.
Just saying.
No, I know. It's really good to lawyer up at the same time, like, really. But no, I have a 4-year-old son, okay? And about a month and a half ago, he went with his dad and his little brother to go see their auntie about 6 hours away. And when we came home, and Dustin and I had chatted on FaceTime and stuff, and I was just like, and I had been asking him, like, how do the boys sleep, blah blah blah. Bentley wasn't anywhere near Dustin when I was asking him this. Bentley was inside the house with Courtney while I was talking to Dustin outside and everything. And Dustin was outside drinking his coffee. And so I was like, well, how'd the boys sleep? How the routine go? Asking like normal questions. He goes, oh, everything was great. Bentley got woken up this morning because Piper and Logan came in and jumped on the bed and woke him up. And that was like the end of it. So he goes inside and I'm talking to the boys. And I call back probably a few hours later to check on them again and stuff. And I asked Bentley, I'm like, how are you doing? Like, are you having fun with your cousins? And he goes, yeah, Piper and Logan jumped on the bed and I woke up and we had fun and then we ran around. I got to see this and I got to do that. And like, he'll get like very expressive, but what people don't realize is that kids that young don't have a filter, essentially. They may elaborate, but the majority of what comes out of their mouth is usually the truth when they say things, especially if like, oh, this person was here with me. This person was here with me. And stuff. So when I first heard about this case and I first like heard about that interview with her son, I was sitting there going, oh my God, that child saw his mom, like that child possibly saw his mom be murdered and just didn't remember it.
Well, police, based on on Josh's behavior and the stuff that his son Charlie said, they did have enough to book him, but they wanted to find Susan. So they put a GPS tracker on his van and released him, hoping that he'd lead them to her. Josh instead went to the airport and rented a Ford Focus. He disappears for 18 hours in the car. And when he returns, the car has an extra 807 miles on it. I mean, maybe he drove around looking for Susan. Maybe he hoped that that's what they would have thought. But honestly, he didn't seem to be acting like a distraught husband.
It seemed like he went and found her body.
Chris Watts found a better job, did a better job at acting like a bereaved husband than this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely looks like he went and found her body and probably moved it.
And honestly, there's a thing later where I think you're right. I think that's exactly what happened. Now, at this point, I want to sort of redirect things to what if Josh didn't do anything? Now, if you were in the position where your wife was missing, you know you're the prime suspect, and the press is beating down your door, how would you react?
I mean, I wouldn't react how he's reacting. Okay, so I understand that everybody handles grief and loss and stuff in a completely different way. Like, we have discussed this in previous videos and everything. This was a huge thing with the Darlie Routier case because, you know, the jury really only saw the part where she's laughing and having fun and doing silly string, but they don't see the rest of the video where she's just absolutely heartbroken and stuff. So it's like, half of me is like, oh, you know, I understand, like, if he'd want to be reclusive, stuff like that and everything. I'd understand if you want to run. Like, if you look at the Scott Peterson thing, he ran. If you look at the Chris Watts thing, he got in front of it badly, but he still got in front of it. The Gannon Stout case in Colorado Springs and stuff, like, his mom and his dad both were there front and center. But his poor mom has just been slandered up and down the freaking internet because of how she reacts to certain things.
Right.
And so it's like, I see it as like, it's like a catch-22. If you're too emotional, people are going to be like, why is she losing her? Like, what is he trying to prove? But if you're not emotional enough, it's, well, what is he hiding?
Right. Now, because I know appearances are showing he doesn't seem concerned at this point, right?
Yeah.
Granted, if I was in that position, I'd be ignoring the press. I'd be hiding away. However, while he's hiding away, Susan's friends and family are making every effort they can. They're putting up flyers. They're holding a candlelight vigil. Anything they can think of. Now, he did show up to the candlelight vigil, but he was late and he left early. Meanwhile, police are digging and stories are coming out. They find Susan's secret safety deposit box at the bank that she worked at. In it, they find a DVD with a video she recorded in 2008 documenting all of their assets and property damage attributed to Joshua, and a makeshift will and testament. Now, I'm going to reverse for just a second here. She made that video because she went and talked to a divorce lawyer in 2008. And the divorce lawyer said, document as much as you can, especially if it's video. Okay. Now, on this will and testament, it says on the outside, for family, friends of Susan, all except Josh Powell, husband. I don't trust him. Dated Saturday, June 28th, 2008. It's handwritten, and she talks about how bad the marriage has become, how Josh has taken out $1 million life insurance policy on her, and she told her boys in it that she would never leave them. It even
Yeah.
says in her handwriting, quote, "If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one." And, quote, "I want it documented that there is extreme turmoil in our marriage."
See, things like this make me so mad
Yep.
that the ending of this case happened the way it happened, because it should not have happened the way it happened at all, because of this right here. This woman is missing. She has technically not been declared dead yet.
She has now.
Like, she's technically not been declared dead. She's, as far as I know, she still has not been
She is.
declared dead.
She was in
She they
2019.
they finally were able to do that? Okay, cool. So, but, like, at this point in time, she has not been declared dead yet. Her husband is acting sketch. And then now, all of a sudden, they find this secret safety deposit box with everything that she needed for the divorce lawyer.
Well, see, but the thing is, though, after she talked to the divorce lawyer, she told her best friend that she was going to do everything she could to make it work, because Josh was going to do everything he could to make sure that she didn't see the boys anymore if she divorced him.
Yeah. But it's stuff like this that makes me so mad. With the ending of this case could have been avoided entirely if
And we're going to get into that because her parents started suing people and started to put
I
this
would have too. I'm sorry, but if it was my kid and my grandkids, oh, you bet your butt I would be suing everybody.
So the police department, once they got out that this letter had been found, or this final will and testament, the police department took a lot of heat for not reacting at all to the circumstantial evidence. But the DA office wouldn't file any charges. They said that they had to wait a whole year with no body before they could file charges. Now, if they found a body, they could file charges. But because there's no body, which is something we've discussed in other cases, they
No
couldn't
body, no
file
crime.
charges. Right. So, meanwhile,
Taylor Swift said it best, no body, no crime.
Meanwhile, Josh is packing up their house, closing bank accounts, cashing out Susan's retirement, and taking the boys back to Puyallup.
So basically he's just like running away from everything that happened. He's taking them far, far, far away from where his wife went missing.
Right. So Josh's dad becomes his biggest defender, and they isolate completely. I mean, we're talking don't even turn the lights on in the house. Curtains drawn, hiding in the dark. He's not talking to the police, he's not talking to media, and he's not looking for his wife. Even Josh's sister at this point doesn't believe him. She wears a wire and confronts her brother, who says, and I quote, he says this, "I'm not going to violate my attorney's direction."
What?
Right. So at this point, Susan's parents start pushing for answers. They start making press appearances. They make billboards. They do honk and waves. And they did this honk and wave in front of a store that they knew Josh and his dad, Stephen, shopped at. So there's news cameras. Stephen and Josh then step in front of the cameras at the honk and wave and start verbally accosting Susan's parents. So after all this goes down, and it shows up on the news, of course, right? Josh finally agrees to an interview. Meanwhile, Stephen is trying to interview also at the same time. He's trying to take over this interview that his son is doing, and he admits that he was sexually attracted to Susan.
Oh, sweet Jesus God.
Right. Soon after.
No.
And he tries to say that there was something going on between them, which obviously wasn't the case, right?
And police didn't think this was weird.
Oh, wait. Soon after that, the website susanpowell.org was launched, described as, quote, the official website of Susan Powell. The site's anonymous entries defended Josh as the victim of a smear campaign by Susan's family, his estranged sister Jennifer, the one who wore the wire, and the LDS Church. Additional posts also speculated that Susan's disappearance was connected to that of a Stephen, I think it's Kocher, who was a former journalist who also vanished the same week as Susan, and that the two of them had run off to Brazil together. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was going to run away with somebody, it sure as hell wouldn't be to Brazil.
I don't even have words. Seriously, just every time I hear facts about this case, I am in stunned disbelief. Like, I am just in stunned disbelief by how much the ball was dropped.
Oh, well, obviously, Josh and Stephen were widely believed to have written these posts, of course.
Well, yeah.
And in late 2010, both men claimed that Susan had abandoned her family due to mental illness and that she had left with this other man. Now, Susan's family obviously were like, okay, no, and it's unsupported by any evidence. Investigator scrutiny extended to Stephen upon learning from a family friend that he had been obsessed with his son's wife. Now,
Yeah.
granted, he also went on the news and everything, and it really came out how obsessed he was. Computer images seized from his house in 2010 turned up 4,500 images of Susan taken without her knowledge. 4,500 images of Susan taken without her knowledge, including close ups of body parts. Now, police also turned their attention to Josh's brother Michael after learning that he had sold his broken down Ford Taurus to a wrecking yard in Pendleton, Oregon, shortly
Interesting.
after Susan's disappearance, and had later ordered satellite images of the lot. Now, when police found the car, a cadaver dog indicated that a decomposing human body had been in the trunk, but DNA tests on the car proved inconclusive.
Because it had been too long, the DNA was too degraded.
Yeah, in those conditions. Now, on September 14th of 2011, now we're nearing almost 2 years that Susan's missing. Utah
Yeah.
authorities discovered a possible gravesite while searching Topaz Mountain, a desert area near Nephi. I think it's pronounced Nephi. I may be pronouncing that wrong. That Joshua had frequented as a campsite. There were signs of recent soil disturbance and shoveling, but after digging a few feet down, police were unable to find any remains in spite of careful sifting of the soil. Federal anthropologists also ruled out the possibility of the site being an ancient burial ground. Now, remember how we said that he drove and possibly moved the
Mm-hmm.
body? I think this might be where she was originally.
And it would explain with the name, too, from what Charlie said.
Right, exactly. Now, police continued to examine the site for quite a time, but they offered no explanation as to why they previously announced the finding of remains when none had actually been confirmed. Authorities said that they were following a scent detected by their sniffer dogs. Now, really quickly, like I said, I want to call back to the rental car that Josh grabbed, and an extra 800 miles showed up on the odometer.
Yeah. So, again, what probably happened was he went back and dug her up. And because she hadn't been there for that long, he
There's
was probably able to take her away. But
scent from the cadaver dogs, but she's not there.
yeah.
So, after this, the relationship between the Powell family and Susan's family, the Cox family, became increasingly hostile. And after police raided Powell's home in 2011, both Joshua and Stephen started speaking to major news outlets regarding journals that Susan had allegedly written about the relationship between Stephen and Susan. Now, Stephen, again, Josh's dad, claimed that he and Susan had been falling in love prior to her disappearance. And he cited the content of the journals, which were written by Susan as a teenager, as evidence to support his theory that she was mentally unstable and could have run away with another man. A judge issued a permanent injunction forbidding Joshua and Stephen from publishing any material from Susan's journals, ordering the pair to either return or destroy any journals already published. Now, on September 22nd.
So, hold on. So, going back to this, they tried to say that this was when Susan was a teenager, correct?
No, the journals were written by Susan when she was a teenager, and they were trying to say that they were recent and showing that she was falling in love with Stephen and possibly ran off with another man.
Yeah, but but this was written when they were written when she was a teenager.
Yeah.
Did she know Josh and his family when she was a teenager?
Exactly. It was just more slander. So,
Oh my
on
gosh.
September 22nd, Stephen was arrested on charges of voyeurism and child pornography.
I mean, are we shocked at that?
No. After police found evidence that he had secretly videotaped numerous women and young girls, including Susan. John Long, Assistant Attorney General for Washington State, said that Joshua was a subject in the child pornography investigation. A friend of Stephen claimed that he was preoccupied with pornography and was hung up on Susan sexually. Chuck Cox, Susan's dad, filed for custody of Susan's children the day after Stephen was arrested. Totally don't blame them. Really glad they did it.
Yeah, no, I would not blame them at all.
Right. A Washington court eventually granted Susan's parents temporary custody of the boys, ruling that Joshua would have to move out of Stephen's home if he wanted to regain custody. Joshua rented a house in South Hill, but authorities later said that he never actually moved into that house, merely making it appear as if he was satisfying the court's instructions while continuing to reside at his father's home.
Gee, you would think that they would have a better system in place to make sure that he was following the rule. Oh, wait, they do.
Yeah, right. Well, now, in late 2011, Joshua underwent a series of court-ordered evaluations in Washington. Now, the evaluations by James Manley determined that Joshua had adequate parenting skills, a steady employment history, which is news to me, and no criminal record or history of domestic violence. Now, those two things are probably true. However, Manley also raised issues concerning the ongoing criminal investigations. Joshua's failure to admit normal personal shortcomings, his overbearing behavior with his sons, and his persistent defensiveness and paranoia attributed to the police and media attention in conjunction with underlying narcissistic traits. Now, the initial recommendation was for Joshua to have visitation with his sons several times a week, supervised by a social worker. In the last week of January 2012, Utah police discovered about 400 images of simulated child pornography, bestiality, and incest on a computer seized from the Powell family home. The pornography had been cached when viewed by the previous owner of the computer, which had been purchased by Susan secondhand. However, Utah authorities misled the court and accused Joshua of having viewed the images himself. The images, while not technically illegal due to the fact that they're like hand-drawn, cartoons,
But
3D
that's not
images,
the point.
they were still cause for great concern to Manley, particularly given Josh's earlier denial of possessing any such material. Josh was recommended to receive a more thorough psychosexual evaluation and polygraph test. However, this guy did not suggest any change to the visitation schedule with Josh's boys. Meanwhile, Josh's brother Michael established a Google Sites page. And I don't know if you guys know anything about Google Sites. They're not as popular now, but it claimed that Susan's parents were abusing and neglecting the boys, also saying that they weren't following the rules set by the child welfare authorities, and that the West Valley City Police had both mishandled the investigation into Susan's disappearance while harassing Joshua. Lawyers for the Cox family disputed the allegations, and Google removed the site after a few days due to terms of use violations.
Okay, so first off, the first thing is, I understand that while these things may not be illegal, essentially, it's still it's still images.
It is.
It's still images of that.
Yes.
And there's a line. There has to be there can't be a line, because there can't be like, oh, well, you're looking at real pictures of these things, but drawn pictures of these things aren't the same thing. They need to be in the same group, because they essentially mean the same freaking thing if you're looking them up. You're just finding loopholes.
Sure. In 2019, there was some stuff that came out that actually decriminated Josh in this, believe it or not, and we're going to talk about it later. It was by somebody else completely.
But also, before Susan, and I don't before Susan, Josh had another girlfriend named Catherine Everett. If you
Mhm.
don't, if you remember looking at that, so he had another girlfriend named Catherine Everett who he literally kept on the shortest leash possible. She'd always say like he had a say in how I dressed, what I looked like, how my hair was cut, how I did my
If
makeup.
I went to go
I
see
couldn't go
anybody,
visit
he had to come with me. Yep.
Yeah, I couldn't go visit my family or my friends or do anything without him being there, and he was always he never, like, physically abused her, but he was probably somewhat emotionally abusive to the point where she had to, like, go to her friends by herself in a different state and break up with him.
So I'll be
Like, that's
honest,
how bad it was.
a number of years ago, I had a guy I started dating who started treating me like that, and my red flag meters went off, and I was like, "Ha ha, no, bye." So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's scary. So on February 5th of 2012, social worker Elizabeth Griffin Hall called 911 after taking Charlie and Braden to a supervised visit at Joshua's house in South Hill. The social worker, who was supposed to monitor the visit between Joshua and the boys, reported that he grabbed them and then would not let her through the door. Soon thereafter, the house exploded, killing Joshua and the two boys. Local authorities treated the case as a double murder suicide, saying that the act appeared to have been deliberate. When authorities notified Stephen, who was in jail, he didn't seem very upset by the news, but was angry toward the authorities who notified him. 2 weeks later, Stephen invoked his Fifth Amendment right not to answer any questions regarding Susan's disappearance. Susan's father and others have stated that they believe Stephen knew what actually happened to Susan, and Stephen was convicted of voyeurism charges in May of 2012 in a trial which largely avoided the issue of Susan's case. Now, after a brief investigation, officials confirmed that the explosion had been deliberately planned. The official cause of death for Joshua and the two boys was determined to be carbon monoxide poisoning, though the coroner also noted, and this is hard for me to say, that both children had significant chopping injuries on the head and neck, and a hatchet was recovered near Joshua's body. And investigators believe that he had attacked the boys with it before being overwhelmed by smoke and fumes. And the fire investigation also found two 5-gallon cans of gasoline on the premises, as well as evidence that the gasoline had been spread throughout the house. Friends and relatives of Joshua told authorities that he had contacted them by email minutes before the incident to say goodbye. Some of them, including his local bishop, received instructions for finding his money and shutting off his utilities. Records also showed that Joshua had withdrawn $7,000 from his bank account and had donated his children's toys and books to local charities the day before the incident. Joshua named his brother Michael as the main beneficiary of his life insurance policy.
So let's just talk about the first part for a second. If you go and listen to the 911 call, because it's out. The 911 call between the social worker and the 911 person is out. It infuriates you because the 911 person, the 911 dispatcher, is just totally nonchalant about it. Like, this woman is literally on the phone, like, Elizabeth is literally on the phone screaming that these kids are in danger. You need to send somebody out now. And this 911 operator is like, well, I'm not sure what you mean, ma'am. What do you mean by they're in danger? Like, their dad has them. I am supposed to be supervising them. He did this. I am afraid these boys are in danger. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down because I can't help you if you don't calm down. And she has like that condescending voice. Not like, ma'am, I really need you to calm down so I can get all the information from you. No, it's, I need you to calm down because I can't help you if you don't calm down. And like, you're like, you listen, like, you hear the house explode while she's on the 911 call. That's the bad part. So, like, I mean, yeah, the cops couldn't even gotten there in time, but like, there were so many things leading up to this that could have been avoided to the point where they could have had in-person visitations in a different complex. I remember when I was taken from my mother and I was put in foster care, my dad had nothing to do with anything, had nothing to do with any of this. He was working up in Alaska at the time my mom had custody of me. So while he was working on getting the custody back, like he easily like we had visitation. So he and my mom both had visitation rights. So twice a week, every week, I would go see them. And it would sometimes be separate, it would sometimes be together. But my foster mom would always take me to the DSHS building downtown in Port Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we would have our visitations. They easily could have done that with Josh and the boys. But they decided to not do that, even though this guy has an entire rap sheet that he possibly murdered his freaking wife
He's under
and hid her
suspect in an
body. And I'm
investigation.
sitting here.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sitting here and I'm going, this is the system that we're supposed to trust our kids with. Like, how the hell are you supposed to be able to trust these kids, like trust the system with these kids?
So there's things,
when,
we're going to talk about it in a minute, but there's things that happen because of this.
oh yeah. Well, and then on top of the fact that but the thing is, it shouldn't have taken this for those to happen. That's the issue.
No.
This could have been avoided. The second Josh's dad was arrested on what he was arrested on, the second Josh's computer was found with that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the second Josh had to have those psychological exams. My mom was a drug addict, okay? And we still had to have supervised visits. My dad wasn't even doing anything. He was literally going through the court systems legally to get me back. My dad wasn't even doing anything, and we still had to have supervised
Mm-hmm.
visits. My dad was not a danger to me at all. And they did this. And now 2 kids are dead. They don't know, they still have no clue where Susan's body is. The social worker now has to live with the guilt of not being able to protect these boys.
And no offense, but I hope the 911 worker does too.
I think the 911 worker actually got fired because of it. Hopefully.
On February 11th of 2013, just over 1 year after the death of Joshua and his sons, Josh's brother Michael killed himself in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he had moved for graduate school. He jumped from the roof of a parking garage. Police had questioned Michael several times in 2012 after discovering his abandoned Ford at the Oregon wrecking yard. Michael was evasive about why he left the car at that location. Utah authorities have since said they believe that Joshua and Michael were accomplices in the murder of Susan. Now, in February of 2013, an interview with Manley, who had conducted the 2011-2012 evaluations of Joshua for Washington authorities, acknowledged his suspicions that Joshua was involved in his wife's disappearance. However, he did not mention these suspicions in his report because they were beyond the scope of his duties and because Joshua had not been charged with any wrongdoing. Now, in March of 2015, Chuck Cox won a court battle with some of the Powells over the control of Susan's estate. I think it's Teresha and Alina had sought to have Susan declared legally dead to collect the life insurance policy.
Well, yeah, because it would go to them because technically they're the next of kin because the boys are dead.
Right. But Cox ultimately gained full control of the estate, and the Cox family also sued Washington's Department of Social and Health Services, claiming that the agency prioritized Josh's parental rights over the safety of the boys and facilitated their deaths.
And it's true. I am fully for trying to give parents equal parental rights, but when it is obviously clear that one of the parents could be a danger to those children, you need to start looking at that.
Susan's family also pressured state lawmakers in Washington and Utah to pass bills that would restrict or block visitation rights for parents being investigated for murder. And the fact that that doesn't exist or didn't exist just baffles me.
Dude, for real.
Common sense.
For real. They'll take your kids away if you do drugs, and they'll make you have visitation rights in a third party area for if you do drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But if you possibly killed your wife, oh yeah, no, it's free reign.
Josh's dad, Stephen Powell, was released from prison on July 11th, 2017, after serving a total of 7 years following his voyeurism and child pornography convictions. He died of natural causes in Tacoma, Washington on July 23rd of 2018. Now, in 2019, the Cold podcast disclosed that the incestuous cartoon porn found by Utah police was not Joshua's and didn't even come from his computer. The pornographic pictures were found to be on a computer that actually belonged to Susan, and the pornography had been viewed by the computer's previous owners from whom she had purchased the used computer from. Cole declined to identify the original owners of the computer because no criminal charges have been filed against anyone related to the images.
So she bought this computer and had no clue because it had been wiped, or?
So she bought the computer secondhand. Now those images were cached, which means they were in the memory because they were viewed on the internet. They weren't actually saved to the computer.
Oh.
So they had to dig to find it. And when they found it, they thought, oh, this is Josh's computer. But actually, it was Susan's computer.
Yeah.
So.
I don't even know. Like, this whole case, and I remember when this whole case happened. Like, I vividly remember the day that this all happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it was 2 years after I graduated. Like, it was 2 years after I graduated. Like, I was, like, 19 years old. I vividly remember... I was 20 years old, actually. Yeah, I vividly remember the day that this all happened. And I remember the outcry, because I remember learning about Josh Powell when Susan went missing all those years prior. Like, I remember all of it. So to find out that, like, I remember when this all happened, and then to find out, like, that's what happened, and it started coming out more and more and more that all this could have been avoided. It just boils your blood.
I mean, honestly, though, all crimes. I think every crime that we've covered almost could have been avoided.
I get that, and I do, but, like, this one, I don't know. I feel like the ones that are, like, in our home state, especially because they're closer, like this case, the Lindsay Baum case,
Mm-hmm.
like, these could have been avoided.
I agree.
It sucks.
On May 21st of 2013, West Valley City Police announced that they had closed the active investigation into Susan's disappearance. Susan Powell was recently declared legally dead by the state of Utah on November 14th of 2019. But given the fates of her sons, it's hard to believe any other fate other than she was murdered by her husband, Joshua. Joshua's sister, Jennifer, wrote a memoir with co-author Emily Clausen about the Powell's family tumultuous history. The memoir was published in June of 2013 as A Light in Dark Places. Jennifer was inspired to write the book, and she says it was to help other people to recognize abuse in either their own relationships or relationships around them, because it's not always completely apparent.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Chill. For more information, including case notes, photos, and sources, please visit our website at truecrimeandchill.com. You can also stay connected with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Look for new episodes from us each week on Tuesday.